"Mom, why doesn't Grandpa want you to come to his house?" That question, seemingly as gentle as a breath, pierced my chest like a dagger. I froze, gripping the steering wheel of the truck tightly, just to keep my hands from trembling. "My name is Nora, 32 years old. I live with my husband, Evan, and our little daughter, Harper, in a quiet suburb west of Chicago. From the outside, my life seems stable. A small rented house, a steady job, a cozy little family. But few know that to achieve this sliver of peace, I sacrificed many years of my youth and my self-respect. I'm a long-haul truck driver, a job often looked down upon, especially by the family I was born into. I spent years crisscrossing highways from Illinois to Texas, from early morning to midnight. The work is grueling, the pay enough to get by, but few understand the loneliness it brings. Some days I slept in the truck on the side of the highway. Some snowy nights I longed for a call from my father just to check in, but there was only silence. Evan, my husband, was once an aspiring fashion designer, but now works part-time at a small clothing store. He's the only one who never asked me, "Why don't you find a more respectable job?" To me, that alone is a profound kind of love. Harper. My 7-year-old daughter is the light of my life. She doesn't know that her mother was once shunned by her entire family. I don't want her to live with the wounds I've carried, but some truths can't be hidden forever. My father, Victor, is a prideful and domineering man. He runs a small construction company and always saw himself as the esteemed pillar of our family. My younger brother, Trent, is his golden child. From a young age, I knew I was the forgotten shadow in my own home. My mother wasn't cruel, but she always silently sided with my father. I still remember the last time I visited home during a crowded family dinner. Someone asked what I was doing. My father took a sip of wine and said coldly, "She drives a truck." Then he changed the subject as if mentioning me was an embarrassment. For the rest of the meal, I chewed in silence, feeling like an outsider. I once thought that if I worked hard enough, if I was persistent enough, they would understand me. But as the years passed, I realized I wasn't seeking their acceptance. I was seeking an apology, one that would likely never come. Then, one winter afternoon while I was resting between deliveries, my phone rang. The screen showed Grandpa Everett. My heart sank slightly. I answered. "Nora? It's me. How are you, kid?" Just hearing his voice made my throat tighten. Grandpa Everett, Victor's father, was the only person in my family who never turned his back on me. Though he was well into his 70s, his voice was still strong, warm as ever. "I miss Harper so much. This year, I'm hosting Christmas at my house with everyone there. I hope you, Evan, and Harper can come." I was silent for a few seconds. A storm of emotions churned inside me. Part of me didn't want to step foot in a place that had humiliated me. But this was Grandpa, the only person I still called family. "I'll come," I said. "Not for the others, but for him." When I told Evan, he frowned slightly. "Are you sure you don't have to go? I know how much they've hurt you." I smiled, though my lips trembled. "I know. But Grandpa called, and Harper. She deserves to know her great-grandfather." Harper jumped with excitement when she heard she'd meet her great-grandpa. She started preparing a drawing of him by a Christmas tree. I looked at her, my heart both joyful and anxious. Evan quietly held my hand. He said nothing, but I knew he was on my side as always. That night I sat alone in the kitchen, staring out the window into the darkness of the neighborhood. The houses nearby were starting to hang Christmas lights. I wondered, would this time be different? Would I return to the same silence as before? I remembered a Christmas 12 years ago when my father's company went bankrupt. He owed hundreds of thousands of dollars and couldn't afford Trent's tuition. I had just gotten into college with a partial scholarship, but chose to drop out, get a truck driver's license, and work to earn money. Each month, I gave my mother my entire paycheck, keeping only a few $100s to live on. I did it because I thought family is where you sacrifice for each other. But after the dust settled when my father rebuilt his company with Grandpa Everett's money, I was cast aside as if I'd never existed. No thank you, no acknowledgement. I knew this visit wouldn't be easy. But I also knew I was no longer the girl pushed away from the dinner table years ago. I was a mother, a wife, a survivor of the coldest winters of my life. This time I wasn't going to beg for recognition. I was going to face the people who brought me down and stand tall. I never imagined I'd see my daughter standing in a room full of relatives, asking me a question that hurt so deeply it numbed me. "Mom, should I raise my hand?" I couldn't answer. I only held Harper's small hand tightly as every pair of eyes in the room turned to us as if we were the only stain in their self-proclaimed pristine Christmas celebration. That afternoon, December 24th, snow fell lightly. Harper wore the red dress she'd picked out a week earlier, a star-shaped hairpin sparkling in her hair, clutching the drawing of her great-grandpa, smiling brightly under a Christmas tree. She skipped around the room, singing and asking Mom, is great-grandpa really as old as I drew him? I didn't answer. I was in the kitchen, my hands trembling slightly as I poured coffee into a thermos. Evan walked in, glanced at Harper, then at me. You don't have to prove anything to anyone, he said, his voice low and steady. But if you want to go, Harper and I are with you. I nodded. I needed that more than any words of encouragement. We left the house at 4 in the afternoon. Our old SUV skidded slightly on the icy road, but Harper chattered away about the gift she'd give her great-grandpa. Evan held my hand when we stopped at a red light. When was the last time you went to his house? He asked. I was silent. My memory took me back to years ago, family gatherings, where I sat quietly at the edge of the table, swallowing bites of food under the scrutinizing gazes of relatives. I remembered a Christmas when I was 20. I wore an old coat, arriving late because I had to finish a cross-state delivery. When I walked in, everyone was toasting Trent, the hope of the family. No one greeted me. My father whispered loud enough for me to hear, "She's here. Next time tell her to call ahead so we don't have to set an extra place." I'll never forget the feeling of being invited, but not truly welcomed. The car turned onto the familiar cobblestone road, leading to Grandpa Everett's large house in Rockford. The old mansion, with its 1950s architecture white picket fence and large glass windows, glowed with warm yellow light. I parked near the end of a row of luxury cars belonging to my uncles and aunts. Their names flashed in my mind as I saw their license plates: Warren, the boastful one, Edgar, the condescending one, and, of course, Victor, my father. We reached the door and ran into Trent. My brother, dressed in a designer sweater, held a beer and leaned against the doorframe like a B-list Hollywood actor. He looked me up and down, smirking. Well, Nora, didn't think you'd actually show up. Then turning to Harper, he tilted his head. Hey, kid, here with your mom to learn how to drive a truck. Evan took half a step forward, his eyes icy, but I squeezed his hand. Not worth it. Not here. Inside the grand living room was ablaze with a massive, intricately decorated Christmas tree. Soft Christmas music played, and the smell of roasted turkey and apple pie filled the air. About 30 people were laughing and clinking glasses. I saw Uncle Silas wave at me, his face like a lifeboat in a sea of strangers. I walked toward him, forcing a smile. He asked quietly, "You okay?" I nodded, but I wasn't sure if I was telling the truth. We had just sat down when my father stood up. He set his wineglass aside, his eyes locked on me. Without raising his voice, he silenced the room. In this house, he said slowly, we welcome those who strive, who have goals, who contribute. Not everyone deserves a seat. The room fell silent. Eyes turned to me, some pitying, most approving. I stood, my gaze unwavering. What are you trying to say? I asked, my voice eerily calm. Trent stepped closer as if waiting for this moment. He means you don't belong here. Who brings a truck driver to an Everett family gathering? I clenched my fists. Evan placed a hand on my shoulder. Harper looked around, confused, clutching my dress. As I started to walk out, Grandpa Everett appeared. He stepped into the room from the hallway, slow and commanding. Everyone parted. His eyes scanned the room, not angry, but deeply disappointed. I won't drag this out, he said. If you, my children, my grandchildren, think Nora doesn't belong here, raise your hand. His words fell like a blade. I thought I'd misheard. The air grew thick. Then, one by one, hands went up. Victor first. Trent next. Warren, Edgar. Their children. Their spouses. One by one. I counted in my head. 28. I held Harper tightly. She whispered, Mom, what are they doing? I didn't know how to answer. Then Harper looked up, her eyes glistening, and asked, Should I raise my hand, Mom? I nearly collapsed. I didn't cry. I just leaned down, touching my forehead to hers. No, sweetheart. You never have to raise your hand to belong anywhere. You just have to be you. I turned to Evan and nodded. We stood together. I didn't need to stay for more wounds. As we took a few steps toward the door, Grandpa Everett slammed his cane on the floor. Enough, he shouted. The ones who need to leave are those who raised their hands. The room froze. Hands still raised hadn't had time to lower. Faces paled. Eyes widened. The earlier laughter turned to stone. Victor leaned forward. Dad, Are you joking? I've never been more serious, Grandpa Everett said, his eyes unflinching. The one who's ashamed me isn't Nora. I looked at him, the man nearing 80, yet standing like a lighthouse in a storm. After Grandpa Everett declared that those who raised their hands had to leave the room, erupted like a beehive, struck hard. Protests came from every corner. Warren jumped up, pointing at Grandpa, his face red. You can't do this. This is your house, but it's ours too. Edgar stepped forward, trying to sound conciliatory dad that was just a lesson. No one really wanted to kick Nora out. We just wanted to remind her to live more responsibly. Trent stood dumbfounded, stammering, Grandpa, you mean it? You're really not giving us anything. Grandpa Everett didn't answer immediately. He walked slowly to the fireplace, his hand trembling slightly but his eyes sharp as steel. Then he turned his gaze, piercing my father. Victor, he said, aren't you ashamed? My father clenched his fists. I'd never seen him silent for so long. Then, in a choked voice, he said, Dad! I raised her. She's my daughter. Isn't it her duty to give back? Those words colder than Christmas snow. They took the air from my lungs. Grandpa Everett wasn't angry, but his voice was resolute. Let me tell you who really gave back. He pointed at me. 12 years ago when you went bankrupt, Victor. You owed over $300,000. Your company collapsed, your house nearly foreclosed. Who saved you? No one spoke. Nora, he continued. She'd just gotten into college with a partial scholarship. But because you had no money, she quietly dropped out, got a truck driver's license, and worked day and night to send money home. Every single penny. While Trent went to private school, got a new car, a personal computer. Every eye in the room turned to me. I felt Evan's hand tighten around mine. Harper, still clutching her drawing, looked up with wide, confused eyes. And I felt lighter. Not because I was vindicated, but because finally someone spoke the truth. He went on. For 2 years, she supported the whole family. When I gave you the money to save your company, Victor, you were afraid your partners would mock you for having a truck driver daughter, so you cut her off. Since then, you've never mentioned her at a single gathering. My father lowered his head, but I saw no shame in his eyes, just frustration at losing control. Then Grandpa Everett pulled an envelope from his pocket. Tonight, I plan to divide $4 million from a land sale among 10 people. $400,000 each. But now, only 2 people deserve it. He turned to me and Uncle Silas. It's all yours, Nora and Silas. No one else. Shouts erupted from Warren, Edgar, their wives, their children. Trent, too. He rushed toward me, his voice almost pleading. Nora, you're not keeping it all, are you? I'm your brother. I'm trying to buy a house. I looked straight into his eyes. Do you remember my birthday? Trent froze. He looked down, frowning as if searching his memory, but finding nothing. It's December 23rd, I said. You lived in the same house as me for 18 years, Trent. No one said anything more. There was nothing left to say. After arguments, anger, and threats, they left the house one by one. I don't recall who walked out first, only the sound of shoes on the tile doors slamming, and Uncle Silas's long sigh as he hugged me tightly. When only 6 of us remained, me, Evan Harper, Grandpa Everett, Uncle Silas, and Aunt Lily and Grandpa, turned to the dining table. No one touched the food, he said, looking at the plates of roast turkey, buttered rolls, mashed potatoes, and steaming desserts. Let's pack it up and give it to the homeless. We didn't ask questions. Each of us took a task, dividing the food into large plastic containers. Harper helped, asking endlessly, Mom, who are the homeless? Where do they live? Why don't they have homes? I knelt down, ruffling her hair. Because sometimes good people face unfair things. But today we'll bring a little fairness to them, okay? She nodded, her smile radiant. We drove to downtown Rockford, where people sheltered under bridges and at bus stops. As we handed out the warm food, I saw eyes sparkling with gratitude. An old man took a roll and whispered Merry Christmas to Harper. She smiled, gave him an extra cookie, and waved. I stood there in the falling snow beside the people I loved, feeling my heart once broken, now stitched back together with a thread called truth and kindness. Back at the house, Grandpa Everett lit the fireplace. The flames warmed the room. He poured tea and turned to me. You know, Nora, he said family isn't the people who give birth to you. I looked up, hanging on his every word, knowing they'd stay with me forever. It's the people who choose to stay with you. After that Christmas in Rockford, I didn't cry, didn't rage, didn't feel satisfied. What I felt most was stillness. a kind of peace hard-won after years of turmoil. I didn't revel in my father's defeat or Trent's stammering ignorance of my birthday. I just felt it was time to do something for myself. The next morning, I woke early, sitting by the kitchen window in our cramped Chicago apartment. Snow from the night before lingered outside. I brewed coffee, pouring 2 cups, one for me, one for Evan as usual. But that day was different. That day I spoke what I'd been thinking all night. I want to start over. Evan looked at me, still sleepy, but my expression snapped him awake. You mean, move? I shook my head. No. I want to start a company. A trucking company, my own. But this time, I won't just drive. I want to run it. Create jobs for others. Turn those exhausting years into a foundation for something bigger. He was silent for a few seconds, then he smiled. Let's do it. I used part of Grandpa Everett's money to enroll in a short business management course at a Chicago community college. Classes ran from 6 to 9 p.m. By day, I still drove, took deliveries, sweated as always. But at night, I was someone else sitting among younger students learning about finance, HR, marketing, and operations. Some nights I fell asleep on the kitchen table, books still open. Some days I wondered if I was doing the right thing. But every morning, when Harper hugged my neck and whispered, "I love you, Mom," I knew I couldn't go back to who I was. 3 months later, I got my certificate and started planning. Evan quit his part-time job to handle bookkeeping and paperwork. I found a warehouse, not big, just enough for 3 trucks. I rented an old one in South Chicago at a reasonable price. Getting a transport license was a nightmare. The paperwork was convoluted, time-consuming, and full of obstacles. Some days I stood at the transport authority with a stack of documents waiting 3 hours only to hear, "You're missing a safety certificate." I wanted to scream, but I took a deep breath and kept going. Hiring drivers wasn't easy either. Some came, saw the small company with no reputation, and left. One backed out after his wife said, "Don't work for a woman boss." But slowly, one by one, those cast aside by the system former colleagues, old drivers came and stayed. On opening day, there were no red ribbons, no press, no champagne. Just Grandpa Everett, Uncle Silas, Evan, Harper, and me, standing in front of the old warehouse freshly painted. Grandpa shook my hand and said simply, "Well done, kid." That meant more than any praise. The company was named Harper Haulage, Harper's idea. "Because Mom always drives back to me," she said. The first months were a brutal race against reality. We got small contracts hauling goods between nearby states. Some days we had one order. Some weeks no one called. Once a client canceled last minute, costing us thousands. But each small failure taught me something. When a driver quit unexpectedly, I learned to build a backup team. When clients paid late, I learned to negotiate and add penalty clauses. When a big client rejected us for being too new, I sent a revised proposal with a handwritten letter, and they came back 2 weeks later. Through every step I had Grandpa Everett and Uncle Silas. Grandpa called every Saturday night asking about contracts. Once, when a client lowballed me, he said, "Don't let them think you need them more than they need you." I followed his advice and won. Uncle Silas quietly reviewed every contract. Once he underlined a clause that could have ruined me in a lawsuit. He grinned. "Being an elementary school teacher comes in handy." I laughed, my eyes stinging. A year later, we had 5 trucks, then 7. Then 10. I rented a small office next to the warehouse where Evan worked daily. Harper moved to a better elementary school near our new home, a single-story house with a backyard big enough for her to plant flowers. Life was no longer a series of escapes, but a steady journey. Some evenings after work, I lay beside Evan, staring at the ceiling, thinking, if I'd used Grandpa's money for revenge to splurge to prove something to my father, I'd have lost it all. But I chose not to retaliate. I chose to build. Because I didn't need my father to see me succeed. I just needed my daughter to know her mother never gave up. I was watering the plants in the backyard when Evan called from inside, his voice awed. "Nora, we have visitors." I wiped my hands on my jeans and walked into the living room. Harper was drawing at the table. At the door stood 2 figures I thought I'd never see again. My father, Victor, looked visibly older. His hair was more than half gray, his coat faded, and for the first time I saw his shoulders slump. Next to him was Trent, my brother, no longer polished, like at past family gatherings. Dark circles under his eyes, rough hands, and an awkwardness like a lost child. I said nothing, just nodded, gesturing for them to come in. Evan went to make tea, and Harper quietly slipped to her room. She was sensitive enough to know when to stay silent. "Dad?" Victor spoke first, his voice no longer firm. "I know you might hate me. not good at showing it, but I'm not here to make excuses. I'm here because I need your help." I said nothing. He continued, "The bank's foreclosing on the house. The company, it's really not going to make it this time. I have nowhere else to turn." I looked at Trent. He avoided my eyes. I remember I said calmly 12 years ago I came home asking for help. No one answered. Victor interrupted quickly. "But you're doing well now, aren't you? You can save me, help your brother." I nodded. "I could. But I have one question. If you can answer it, I'll help." The room went silent. "When's my birthday?" Trent looked up. Victor stared as if I were joking. "Nora, that doesn't matter right now." "No." I said, my eyes fixed on them. "It matters. Because it's the least you should know about someone who sacrificed her youth for her family." Neither could answer. I stood gently but firmly. "I'm sorry, I can't help." I walked them to the door. No anger, no shouting. Just a quiet closing of a door that had been open too long, too many times for people who didn't value it. 1 year later, I was working in the office when Evan called me over. "Did you make this transfer?" I looked at the screen. The sender's name was unclear, but the description read, "Repaying what you gave. Amount $287,300. I froze. Memories flooded back winter nights driving cross-state, every penny sent home tuition and living expenses for Trent instant noodles I ate to save money. That same day I received a handwritten letter. The uneven handwriting was unmistakably Trent's. "Dear Nora, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I was too selfish, too late, too cowardly. But I can't live as a debtor, especially to someone who sacrificed her dreams for me. This past year I worked nights at a packing factory, days delivering packages, saved every penny. No one made me do it. I knew I had to do what's right. This is what you gave me, or most of it. I know you don't need it, but I needed to repay, even just a part. If one day my daughter asks, 'What did you do right, Dad?' I hope this is the one thing I can tell her." Trent. I folded the letter. I didn't cry, but my heart somehow softened. I didn't call back, didn't text, didn't send a thank you. But 2 weeks later I transferred a small sum to a local scholarship fund in Trent's daughter's name. In the note I wrote only "Live kindly, and teach your daughter to do the same." "Mom, I think great-grandpa is a real superhero." Harper whispered that on a sunny Sunday afternoon, hugging me from behind her voice light as a cool breeze. I was peeling apples in the kitchen, and her words made my hand pause mid-air. I turned to look at her, seeing those clear, innocent eyes, just like the day she asked, "Why doesn't Grandpa want you to come to his house?" But now I had an answer, not one of pain or anger, but a smile, an understanding, a maturity born not from revenge, but from love, kept for the right people. Harper's grown. 10 years old, longer hair, taller, and as strong as I'd hoped she'd be. But she's kept her father's gentle thoughtfulness, a quiet care for others. When I look at Harper, I see the me before I was hurt, and Evan, the man who always chose to stand by me, even when no one asked him to. Harper Haulage now has 10 trucks, 20 employees. Evan's no longer just a bookkeeper, he's a proper operations manager. He handles partnerships, negotiates with contractors, and is the first person drivers turn to with problems. I still drive, not because I need to, but because I want to. Some days I take a short trip to the suburbs, delivering a few boxes to a small store just to remember where I started. I don't want to forget. Ever. Grandpa Everett is still healthy at 80. He lives in his Rockford house, calling me twice a week, asking about Harper, the weather, if I'm sleeping enough. The drawing Harper made of him when she was 7 still hangs in his living room. He says don't replace it. This picture reminds me some small things are enough to live kindly forever. I used to think a real family meant being accepted by everyone. I longed to be invited to the main table at gatherings. I dreamed of my father proudly saying, "This is my daughter." But now I know I don't need 30 relatives. I just need 3 who truly care. And I have them, Evan Harper and Grandpa Everett. Every Sunday we have a small tradition dinner together, no phones allowed. Harper shares her favorite lesson from the week. Evan tells a good story from the company, and I write in my journal. I don't write to complain or to record successes. I write to remember, despite being looked down on, forgotten standing in a room, with 28 hands raised to cast me out, I didn't fall. And I didn't become them. Sometimes Trent sends pictures of his daughter. She looks eerily like Harper. I haven't called or messaged back, but I send a scholarship every year, not for him, but because his child deserves a better start than he had. Once, when Evan asked if I'd ever consider reconciling with my father, I said softly, I don't need to make peace. I just need to keep peace for our little family." He nodded as always, no pressure, no judgment. I've learned to leave the past behind without locking it away, because I know if I keep staring at the scars, I won't see the new skin healing. Harper sat beside me, resting her head on my lap like when she was tiny. She repeated, "Mom, great-grandpa is a real superhero." I nodded. "Yes, sweetheart. He is. Not because he's strong, but because he chose to protect the right person when everyone else turned away." Outside, the afternoon sun filtered through the trees. An ordinary day passing slowly, peacefully. No loud music, no dazzling success. My happiness now lies in this moment: a warm kitchen, a complete family, and a heart free of burdens. That night, after Harper was asleep, I sat alone in my office, opening the old journal I'd kept for the past year. I read each line, each passage, from the days I hid my anger to when I learned to trust life again. The last page was still blank. I picked up my pen and wrote, "I'm no longer angry, because I've seen kindness is never wasted. After all the ups and downs, the pain, and the choices, I've realized something simple, yet profound. Family isn't where you're forced to belong, but where you're chosen to stay, with love and kindness." My story isn't about revenge or resounding success. It's the journey of a woman learning to forgive, without forgetting to rise, without trampling others, and most importantly, to love herself again, after years of being abandoned. I believe each of us has been a Nora looked down on, forgotten. But like me, you can choose to reclaim your worth, not with anger, but with persistence and kindness. If this story resonates with you, please share your thoughts in the comments and follow the channel for more heartfelt stories, because out there someone needs a spark of light like you. Thank you for listening.